Hello everyone and welcome to another video with me, 320 Sim Pilot. I'm a real-world airline pilot, and in today's video I'm going to be showing you the PMDG 777-200ER for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 and Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. This is a really exciting preview that PMDG have kindly sent over, so thank you to PMDG for that. And this is their upcoming airliner coming very soon to Microsoft Flight Simulator, as I say, 2020 and 2024. Both versions are included in the package. In this package, you'll get the 777-200ER, which is, of course, the earlier variant of the Boeing 777. We've already had the PMDG 777-300ER, the extended version, which is already out for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. But this is the shorter version that came before. This first flew in the early 1990s, 1996 in fact it first flew, just a few years after the original 777-200. ER stands for Extended Range. This aircraft was designed to fly further and carry more weight, making it more practical and therefore useful to the airlines. It was originally called the Increased Gross Weight IGW variant, but they changed that to ER, a little neater. It comes with 3 different engine types. Quite unusual for a modern airliner to have 3 choices, but there we go. So this is the Rolls-Royce you can see in front of you. There is also General Electric engines and Pratt & Whitney engines, and we'll see all of those in today's video, all with their own sound sets. PMDG have worked hard on the sound sets of this aircraft, and it I think shows, but you'll see it throughout today's video. There is a lot more going on with the sound compared to the original PMDG 777-300ER sounds. Some differences this has over the 300ER is that you've got a slightly shorter wingspan and the more original wing. This is known as the classic 777 variant now, or one of the classic variants due to that. But otherwise it's very similar to operate, and a machine that the pilots do enjoy flying around. But it is now, like I say, a classic, so becoming a little bit older, a little less of the nice new features that the 777-300ER does have. It has a 298-ton maximum takeoff weight, so this is a big machine, make no doubt. Even compared to its bigger sibling, the 300ER, this is still a big, heavy, long-haul airliner by any standards. It's a chunky machine. This aircraft once as well broke the record for the longest distance. It flew for over 20 hours, over 10,000 nautical miles in one go, covering the largest Great Circle distance. That was on a flight from Seattle to Kuala Lumpur. Quite amazing. So in today's video I'm going to take it for a full flight. You'll see me do a full cold and dark setup of the airplane. We'll just indulge ourselves by spending some time in the Boeing 777-200, listening to it, feeling it and operating it. I currently fly the Boeing 787 in the real world, so although I am type rated on the Boeing 777, I have not flown one in real life yet. However, I have had lots of talk with Boeing 777 pilots who do operate these aircraft to get comparisons and see what they think. So I'm going to try and give you as much real world context as possible. And like I say, I am type rated on this aircraft as it is such a similar type rating and a similar way of operating to the Boeing 787. I'll be filming in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 using a preview version of the aircraft, so this is not the final release build, this is still a work in progress. Right, let's get started. So here are the variants that you get in the package, and it's quite a good selection. We get 3 versions of the 777-200ER. First of all, the GE, General Electric engines up here, as used by, as you can see, Alitalia. Then we have the Pratt & Whitney variant, and over here we have the Rolls-Royce variant. So we're going to take the Rolls-Royce variant for a spin. This was the first variant delivered of the 200ER. We'll take it in this British Airways livery, and obviously we'll start at London Heathrow. So here it is on stand, our glorious Boeing 777-200ER extended range. The first things we're going to notice about it compared to the 777-300ER that we've already seen from PMDG is, of course, it is slightly shorter. It's a shorter aircraft with a slightly reduced wingspan as a result. It did, of course, come before the 300, so really this is the original and the 300ER is an extended version. This is also our first classic 777 from PMDG in Microsoft Flight Simulator. The 777-200, 200ER are considered classics, and the original 300, which you don't see many of around the world. But the 200ER is a very, very popular machine and is in service in a lot of places. This is the Rolls-Royce equipped variant, as we saw, from British Airways, but there is also, of course, the GE and the Pratt & Whitney. As we move around the outside, like I say, not much to report in difference to the 300ER. The exterior model is obviously lovely, just as it was before. As I bring the camera around, you'll get to see some of the level of detail that we have on the PMDG, but we would expect high levels of detail from them, and we do have it. 777s are notable for being one of the tallest aircraft sat on the ground, especially the fuselage to the ground height. It is very high. Even if you're quite tall, it's a struggle to reach the bottom walking underneath. Quite the difference to the 787, which I currently fly, where you actually have to sort of stoop to walk underneath it. It's a very low down airplane, but as you can see, that probably about head height here. You can see the flight deck all the way up there. I'll come around on the sunny side, why not? You'd normally start your walk around sort of going this way around, but yeah. Got your pitos, statics, and temperature probes and angle of attack probes there. This is the avionics vent outlet. It's open, but there's no flow at the moment as this airplane is cold and dark, so nice detail to see here. Lots of antennas, ADFs, and so on along the front here. Static ports and negative relief valves are modelled here, which is nice. Lots of static ports, and these are the overpressure relief valves. So this is for the cabin. If it overpressurizes, they'll burst open and let the air out, so it doesn't obviously cause any structural damage. And these are the negative pressure. So of course, as we pressurize up and down, that could cause the reverse issue where there's too little pressure inside, and that would allow the air into the cabin. Here we have the air conditioning pack inlet. So that's in there, but unlike the 787, we do not have anything else because the air for the packs and it goes into the cabin is provided by the engines. This air simply goes in, is used to cool down the air from the engines, and then is sent out. It is not actually an inlet into the airplane itself. The landing gear is slightly different to the 777-300. It is still a triple bogey setup, and that allows this aircraft to be very high weights at almost 300 tons. It's a heavy airplane. It's a big machine. Don't make no mistake. The 300 is a huge machine. This is a big machine. Very, very big indeed. We still have steering on the last truck. So the rear two wheels still do steer, just like the 777-300. But what we don't have is the semi-gear tilt, which is modeled by PMDG really well on the 300ER. And correctly, it is missing here. That means that on takeoff, this gear does not sort of stand up and push the airplane into the sky. And likewise on landing, it does not sort of dampen the landings. It is just a bit more of a normal style landing gear bogey. It surprises me always how similar this is to the 787 despite being so much taller, but there we go. Moving out along the wings, we have levels of detail and grime as you would expect. That's the inboard flaperon drooping as we have no hydraulic pressure correctly. And you can see the streaks of grime coming from flap lever fairings and the fuel tank access panels, which is quite common. They do typically look like that. This is the fuel jettison nozzle located out by the aileron to keep it out of the way, and then you have the static wicks and the wingtip. As I said, the wingspan on this aircraft is a little bit shorter. It's about 4 meters less than the 300ER, so essentially similar. It's in the same category for taxiing around. It is just it is slightly reduced because this is the older style 777 wing, the sort of the original style. You can consider it as per this being the so-called classic. I think it's a nicely proportioned airplane, and PMDG have, of course, completely accurately captured the dimensions. It is, it's really nice. It's grown on me a lot, the 200 compared to the 300, which was previously the one I liked the look of better. But for some reason, the 200 really appeals. It looks a bit like the original 320 size, although it's perhaps a little bit stocky. As we look at the tail, we're going to have lots more details, of course. You have the cabin outflow valve showing here, which is where the regular air is coming out the back of the airplane, and that is this valve will regulate itself to keep the cabin pressure sensible. High cabin altitude in the 777 compared to some other airliners like the 787. This is a bit more like a 320 in terms of its cabin pressurization. That door's open there. That's not really what you want. Interesting, you can see the cabin pressure differential release there as part of the door opening, so that's modeled. Something that's interesting about the tail of the 777-200 ER is that it does also, or certainly on some of the aircraft, have the pinhole cameras fitted. So even though it doesn't use that system, it does have the little holes for it, although that is not modelled on this particular variant I can see here. But yeah, some of the 777-200s are there. Oh, there we go. I think that is going to be one. So there's a camera system on the 777-300, which you do not get on the 200, but it still has the hole for it. So that's there. It is not functional. Yeah, that camera system is used on the 300 to assist with taxiing, so you can see where the main landing gear trucks are going to go. And it's not needed on the 200. It's considered short enough, although, like I say, still a big airplane. You can hear the first officer contributing there. The most recognizable thing about a 777 is, firstly, it's triple landing gear bogey, although that has changed recently as the 350's taken that on board as well. But it's also the APU exhaust. I think this is a really good idea. It's this sort of flush tail section, but it is no longer used. The 787 does not use the same design, but there we go. You can see lots of rivets around the APU because you don't need to bother making them flush, which is I think more expensive or maybe heavier, I'm not sure which, but you don't need to bother with that because the air is so, you're on the tail end of the airplane, it has little or negligible environmental effect on the streamlinedness of the aircraft. So there we go. Very big tail on the 777 as well, very big, very in proportion. It gives it quite a sort of robust look, I think. Here we are on the flight deck then. So let's get this thing powered up so you can see some of the changes that PMDG have done. So this is in the cold and dark state, very rare for a long haul aircraft, but in its lovely tan brown color. It's a sort of, I find it quite nostalgic and I would love to fly an airplane. I'm hoping I get the chance to fly an airplane in this color, but there we go. Now this is the cold and dark state, like I say, quite rare, but it's pretty straightforward to power it up. First of all, I am going to make sure we have some external power connected. So here's the new EFB. I'll go to ground operations and then ground connections. And in here, you can request ground power. That connects over a second and there we go. And I can see it's here because we have available lights both over here. Now, I'm going to run through just setting up this airplane and powering it up, but I have already done full tutorials on the Boeing 777-300ER from PMDG, and the procedure is the same for the 200ER. So please do watch my PMDG 777 cold and dark to takeoff to cruise, and descent and landing videos. They're 3 different videos that will take you through everything you need to know to fly the 777, and they are completely relevant because it's exactly the same. The cockpits are so similar. Despite this being a classic, you'll see it is not the traditional sort of classic you might expect. We have the full set of screens, we have a great airplane here, and it is still as modern as the 300 basically. So we would make sure things like the wipers are off, all the hydraulics are off, the landing gear lever is down. I'm going to put on the battery and I'm going to provide some external power. This is not the full procedure, not even in the correct order necessarily. This is just if you just got this airplane and you want to get it going. But hopefully you'll hear the dings and dongs and see the lights and see the systems working, and that will appeal or not. But it'll give you an idea of how this airplane is for you. So that's good. So external power is coming. The screens do take a while to load. It is a slow feature. They need warming up. So those screens will be on the way. Some other things we can do in the meantime is turn on the Adiru as well, give the airplane a chance to start aligning its navigation systems. And we will just shortly check the systems pages. But what I can do in the meantime is come down to the FMS. And in here we can go to PMDG Setup, Aircraft, and you can see all the usual PMDG things are still here. So you can choose whether you want the tablets or not, whether you want the aircraft to be able to capture the glide slope before localizer, relevant for landing. We'll talk about that later. Auto LNAV on go around. So that would mean if you go around, do you want the airplane to fly ahead in a straight line, or do you want it to actually follow the go around procedure? Or why wouldn't you? So that's definitely going to be enabled. And the list goes on and on and on. Can you do takeoff thrust derates? We could enable or disable those. We've got climb thrust derates. It goes on and on. They have so many options. PMDG have always been good for this. And lo and behold, they are all in here as well. You can even have the maximum taxiway. Look at that. Fantastic. Likewise, you can do displays and set it to the correct setting, which would be kilograms and degrees Celsius. And as you go through, you can just change everything around. So I want the split axis. That's the normal sort of crossbar flight director. Over here, we have the radar round dial, which I like. You don't always see that. We won't have an angle of attack indicator. That's quite rare, I think. And what I do want to see is have heading up. So track up, no, which is correct. That's good. Often the PMDGs come with track up, but we want heading up. So that's good. That means that our navigation display will show us heading at the top instead of track, which is a setting that I would not want. Let's change that to hectopascals while we're there. Over here we have you can hear, by the way, some fans coming on and off as the airplane powers up. It's great. It's really nice to see. In here, we now have the option to go to electronic flight bag and request our data from SimBrief. So we're going to imagine this is our new delivery of a lovely 777-200ER. So we're going to take it on a proving flight, allow crews to get used to it and so on by flying it down to Geneva. We might not do all of that. We'll probably turn around and come back into London for the sake of this video. But there we go. This is the data load straight in. So now we have SimBrief compatibility with the tablet, which is really nice. You can go into your charts as well. You have 2 style of map. Your airplane is actually on there as well. There it is. So that's pretty good for awareness. But yeah, pretty good. And then you can grab your weather. So if we put in departure, EGLL, there it is. Really nice, neat, nice. And we'll see more of that as we go through the flight. You can see, and you would have heard, the screens have now come to life. The airplane has sort of started to wake up. So I'm just going to return. You'll see as well, all the loading can be done in here, but I'm going to do that differently. So I'm going to go to FMC and leave it here. Database is out of date. I don't currently have the option to update it for this aircraft. That will come later. Good. So as we look on the screens, we can now go to the stat page. Stat page here, check the hydraulic quantities. They are all reasonable. We have enough crew oxygen, and the APU is not running, so we can leave that alone. I'm also going to press engine and check that we have enough oil, which we do. No refill, no complaints from the aeroplane. So that's a good sign. We need engine oil, we need hydraulic fluid, we need oxygen. All very important things. So that's all looking good. If you're not looking good and something's missing from there, you can go to your, let me get this right, ground operations, ground maintenance. And here you can see I've been messing around. So I've worn out some of the tires already with rejected takeoffs and so on. But you can refill your hydraulic fluid, refill the fire bottles if you want, replace your brakes and the tires as required. So I'll be curious to see as we go around. I'll have a look outside, see if those tires do look more worn at the back than the front. Interesting. You can also cool down the brakes if you're doing a short turnaround. There's no brake fans on this 777. Now we'll move to the overhead panel. Adiro is on. Thrust asymmetry compensation, a unique 777 feature in the case of an engine failure to allow the aircraft to compensate for you for the yaw. But that is in auto. That's where we want it. And we have the primary flight computers automatically running. Let's power up the systems for the aircraft. We're on. Battery is on, and I'm going to start the APU. I'm curious actually if I change that to a different screen or even turn it off. If I start the APU, would it show up? So you hold it to start, and then it flicks back to on. Nothing showing up here, but what I can do is go to the stat page again, and we'll see the APU down here. And that now is, actually we'll take the drone out. That is opening up its inlet door on the tail. There it is now. That's popped open. And you can see the exhaust as it starts to power up. Just a little jet engine in the back for our electrics and air. So there we go. APU information appears on the stat page, all looking very good. Now I don't want to spend too long on the overhead panel, but we'll arm the emergency lights. We'll put the window heat on. You wouldn't normally turn that off. Ram air turbine, obviously we want blank. We'll leave the electric and hydraulic pumps all off for now until we're ready to pressurize the airplane. I'll put the seatbelt signs to on. We haven't quite fueled, but we'll just skip ahead for that one. So that goes on normally after the refueling is complete. And all these lights are off. You do have a nice master brightness switch, just like on the 7.8, which controls all the light. It's a really great system. I really, really like it. Up here on the overhead panel, cargo fire, we don't want to do anything here. We want the engine EEC modes in normal and the start switch is in normal. Auto start on, because of course we want to use the auto start system. Fuel jettison is off. So it's not armed, nothing's on. Fuel pumps all stay off now as well. There's no pressurized light on the left pump because that is feeding the APU, so it automatically comes on. If I go to fuel, you'll see that down here. There you go. That is automatically feeding the APU. Great. Anti-ice all in auto, just like the 7.8. Nav lights on. Lights all down here can stay off. Overhead panel air conditioning is all in the on position. Trim air is on. The packs are on. We can leave all this on and in auto. Left engine, right engine, everything we want on or auto. Pressurization as well, all in auto, please, and don't have this set. Have this all pushed in. We don't want it out, we want it in. And the right wiper is obviously off. We'll set up the MCP, the mode control panel, later once we're ready. This is our EFIS control, which we'll also set up later on once we are ready with our departure. On the center console, I've already set this to the QNH of 1013. I can put the auto brake to RTO. Glide slope inhibit is off. Flap override and all of these should be in normal position, so no lights at all. And then I'm going to come down and put the checklist resets. So I'm going to go checklist, and then you would use the cursor, which is on this trackpad here, but luckily we can just use our mouse. Reset, reset all. And also you would go to the communications page if you had it, and you could start setting up your airline systems and so on if you wanted to. Alternate gears in the normal position, and the FMSs are set left and right to come later. Speed brakes retracted, flaps are up, alternate is all off, of course. Parking brake should be set, so I'll make sure that is set. That should have been set much earlier. And then we have the fire guards put on, off, pushed in. The fuel controls in cutoff. Our radios ought to be set. Quite old school radios though. Disappointing. Much better on the 7.8. This is more Airbus style, fun enough, or original Airbus style. The left and right systems being separate like that. And then that's it. So now we're going to set up the actual airplane by going into the FMS. Now, if you didn't want to do everything I've just done and wanted to set up the airplane much quicker, you can press Menu, PMDG Setup, Panel State Load, and you could choose, there's actually 3 pages here. So you could have it ready for taxi. You can have it on the apron with GSX. So yeah, that's another way to do it. It's not actually, you'll notice that for all that talking I just did, we didn't really do a lot. To turn on the airplane, it's simply battery, external power, put every switch to on or auto except for the hydraulics and the fuel, which you leave off for now. And that's about it. And then you can set the auto brake to RTO. So there we go. Anyway, it's time to set up the FMS. So we go back to the menu. So here we have the ident page. So you check it's the right aeroplane, 777-200. Yes, please. And we're with the Trent 892 engines. And we have a drag fuel flow here. This is dependent on the airline. Pausing it then. I'm going to type in our airport. We're at Heathrow. Gives us those coordinates. Very similar to our GPS coordinates. I'm going to use a GPS position to align. That will then give us our PFD and our screen starts to look a bit more normal. Next is the route. I'm going to do route request because we have a sim brief route from Heathrow to Geneva. So I'm going to do that. You can, of course, also just type it in. So it would type in EGLL and the destination. So I'm just going to do route request because that's easier, and let's use the new feature. I can then automatically set the payload, set the fuel, which should be 14.8, which we've now got. So now you would turn on your seatbelt sign when fueling is complete. And I'm also going to select this as my route. That's now gone in, but there's not activated. This is not an active route. Actually, we need to wait for it to load first as well. So we'll give it just a second to do that. There we go. It tells us descent forecast uplink ready, and behind that it says wind data uplink ready, and the Perfinite uplink is also ready, interesting, and Route 1 uplink ready. So that's all ready to go. So route uplink, let's load it. That's loading in now. This is the most typical way to operate a long-haul airplane. It's rare to have to type in an entire route. It's especially handy for going oceanic when individual waypoints might have funny names or coordinate names or no name at all, and you have to type in the actual coordinates. So it can go wrong if, this is a nice way to sort of remove some errors from that. If I press the next page, I can check the routing. So out via Maxit, Yankee 803 Midhurst, Lima 612 Bognor, Upper Lima 612, and on it goes. If it didn't, and I wanted to type it in, I would simply go to my flight plan, which is over here, electronic flight bag, OFP, scroll down to my routes, which is here, and then I'll type it in. So Maxit, Yankee 803 to Midhurst. So you type in Maxit, Yankee 803 Midhurst, and then so on all the way through. That looks good. So I'm going to press activate. And remember, in Boeings, if you press activate and then a light comes on, you need to execute it as well. So if you see this execute light, you need to press it or it won't happen. That's not actually in my route yet. That's done. And we're happy with the route all the way through. There's the second half to Geneva. Then we go to Perfinite. It's calculated our fuel, which is correct. That's what the 777 will do. And the zero fuel weight, you can type in. Now we know our zero fuel weight from our what we loaded in over here, weight and balance. You can also see it here. Now here's a little trick. Firstly, you can click on the pounds and get it to kilograms, which is very handy. And you can see that our zero fuel weight is 170 tons, takeoff weight 185.4, and our fuel load is therefore going to be about our 14.8 tons. But you can click load from SimBrief here, or we already did it in here when it gave us the option. So you've got lots of ways to do it. It couldn't be easier, really. You can't miss it. And even better than that, I don't actually have to look at the weight. I'll just click on this, 170.6, and lo and behold, 170.6. So it knows my zero fuel weight. I love when flight sims do that. It makes life so much easier for getting going quickly. And that gives us a gross weight of 185.4. So that's our zero fuel weight. It knows our reserves because it's loaded it in from the sim brief, but otherwise you would put in your final reserve and alternate fuel in there, which we can see back on our flight plan. We have final reserve fuel of 2.4, alternate of 3.4, so that is 5.8. There it is. It's actually asking us to accept that data because it has loaded it in from the sim brief, because you would also potentially have to type this stuff in. So flight level 410, cost an X44, you just type it in if you need to. This is all available on your flight plan. Look, there's your cruise level. Actually, we wanted to cruise at 390, so I'm going to change that. But we do want cost an X44. So let's put in 390. So I need to reject this if I want to type stuff in. So I'm actually going to reject it and do it myself. So we said 5.8. I'm going to cruise at 390, which has gone in now. Cost an X44. And then the cruise CG will come later from our load sheet. Step size, it says RVSM. We'll go for 2,000. That's the normal step size if you're not going oceanic. Thrust limit, this is all to come with our takeoff performance, which we do not yet have. So how are we going to get that? Before we can do our performance, we need to choose our departure. So click on departure. We're going to take off from runway 27 right, and we're going out via Maxit. So we'll do a Maxit 1 Foxtrot SID. If we look on the navigation display, you'll see it in white because it's ready to go. And again, remember, little execute light, execute. Now we have our line. Great. I won't put in the arrival yet. I will just do the departure. It's the more Boeing way of doing it. Now we need to go back to our performance. How do we do that? Well, you can press through and you'll end up at it eventually. But if you're ever lost, let's say you've gone through the legs page where you can check not only the route but the individual waypoints, which are part of the SID, you can see. You can press init ref and it should take you back to takeoff ref at this page. If it doesn't, press index perf and then you'll see through. Again, you can get to takeoff or init ref, index, takeoff. It takes a while to get used to that if you're from the Airbus. But anyway, there we go. So let's get this performance loaded in. So now I can import from my flight plan, Heathrow. We're taking off from 27 right. I'm going to import the aircraft. We'll go optimum on the flap and the rating, which is the D rate of the engines. It now has our weights and our CG. And then I can, actually I'm going to set the weather myself because as I say, I've gone for very benign weather. 2705. 15 1013 1013. Make sure you get the units right. And then I hit calculate. And there we go. Flap 5 takeoff, EPR 1.3, rating takeoff, cell temp 64. And then we have our speeds. So what I'm going to do is type these in. So we'll take off with flaps 5. Thrust temperature is 64 degrees. So we'll type in 64. CG for takeoff is going to be 6.25. What's our actual CG? 25.6. So that is effectively 26. 6.25 trim, which matches. Speeds 127, 132, 149. That actually matches the reference speed. So that's a good sign. Great. If you turn reference speeds off, you won't see those there, by the way. Not all airlines have that feature enabled. Takeoff gross weight is going to be 185.4. Now this would also depend on the airline how you have this policy set, and that's what actually gets you those speeds in. So there you go. So don't do that last. I've not seen it set up quite like this before. Good. Now there's lots more details in here, but these are things to talk about on a stream or perhaps a more in-depth tutorial into the FMS. We have things like our ability to, on the VNAV page, adjust. You can see the next restriction, 3,000 or above, and you can go through, start figuring out your optimum cruises and so on, but you typically do that in the climb once you're talking to a traffic control and you've actually got underway. In the performance, we can also see the climb 2 has been armed, so it's going to do a D-rated climb, which makes sense at this weight. If we were to have enabled in that PMDG options tab, we could enable fixed D-rated takeoff, so we could have had takeoff 1 and takeoff 2 as well as climb 1 and climb 2, but we haven't got that enabled, so there we go. I'm going to now put this on the takeoff reference page. That's typically where it would be left, and the co-pilot would have it, or the pilot monitoring I should say, would be in the FMC and have it on the legs page. Let's brighten it up, see if we can get it to look match. There we go, much nicer. So you can see the routing and the initial takeoff performance. Good. Now that SID, if we want to see the chart for, I just happen to know that was going to be the SID because I looked at the route already. So if we go to, let me get this right, EFB, Navigraph charts, departure, and I'm hoping if I go SID, max it from the westerly facing runway, there it is. So we're going to do that, and then I can just pin that. Great. So that's the route we're going to take, and we'll also just have some taxi charts. I'm sure you've all seen me taxi out of Heathrow to 27 right before, but there we go, out, up and along, and then 27 rights over here. Good stuff. Now on that departure, we need to set up a few of the last things. So pinned SIDs. First of all, the stop altitude, as you can see here, is max 6,000 feet. At max it, that's the highest altitude. I'm going to put 6,000 feet into this little window. You need to swap it to thousands, otherwise if you have it in auto, you have to drag it around. Auto's used for the hundreds, and it can also be used in non-precision approaches, but we don't want that. So 6,000 feet. I'm going to put the heading. I need to make sure it's in auto so the airplane banks correctly, and we want to have it set for runway 27. So our initial heading off the runway is, let's just check that, going to be, right, just a straight ahead. I'm going to put 269 in the window, as that's where we're facing now. Good. I need to put the V2 in the speed window. So V2 is 149, so let's put 149. These are very light and low speeds because we are taking off at such a lightweight because we haven't got much fuel. We've got lots of passengers, not much cargo and not much fuel. I'm going to arm lateral navigation. Oh, of course, we can't do that. We need to turn on flight directors. So both flight directors go on. Now you see Toga flight director. That's our FMAs. And we need to arm LNAV and arm VNAV, so they'll appear in white underneath. I need to put 6,000 in that window. There we go. Good. Auto throttle is armed. These should be in the up position. The autopilot disengage bar is in. We've got the heading, got the altitude, and the flight directors are now on. So that is in a good place. We can now check on our EFIS control. Let's set up the map how we want. So I want to display nearby traffic. So if I press that, traffic will appear, little blue TFC. I'm going to have nearby airports showing. And I could put data if I wanted, which will show you the time you'll get to the waypoints and the restrictions at those waypoints coming up. I'm going to display the left VOR with this little needle down here. You can also set it to show you the left ADF, only one or the other. QNH needs to be in hectopascals, so I flick that over and we get 1013 HPA. The rad out is shown here at -4, which is normal because if we look outside, the airplane, as you can imagine, when it takes off or lands, the nose is up high and the gear is extended. So that 4 feet is basically the gear extension. So you sort of sunk into the ground a little bit in the perception of the radio altimeter. It looks like some automatic things have happened. The stairs have been removed, but the chocks are still in place. So let's see if we can start to get our aeroplane ready to go. We have electronic checklist in the 777. So we press checklist up here and it will bring it up here. Pre-flight checklist, oxygen masks should have been tested and set to 100%. So you test that up here, makes good noise, and is set in the middle to the 100% sign. So that's good. So that is done. So you tick it and it moves down to the next one. Flight instruments, heading 269, altimeter on 1013 showing 80 feet. Tick. Pre-flight checklist complete. And then you can just get rid of that from there. And then when you go to it next, it should show you the next checklist in the sequence, which in this case is the before start checklist. Now we don't want to do that just yet. We need to speak to ground. So we need to get a pushback tug. So let's see if I can make that work. I'm going to go back to ground service vehicles. Everything should have gone. We're on the APU, so we can release the ground power. And I'm hoping I can get a tug to come out to the aeroplane. You can see here you can have lots of different ground equipment. It's pretty cool. Well, it appears pushback is not currently functional. So what we're going to do is use the flight simulator one. So I'll just press Shift P to get the airplane moving. So we need to pressurize the airplane first. To do that, we're going to turn on the pumps. We need to do it right to left on this airplane. So it goes right electric to auto, C2, C1, left electric to auto, and then I'm going to turn on the center air pumps. So that's now on and auto for everything. You can check your hydraulic page over here and it's going to show you that you have achieved that. Differences from the 300 here, like I say, next to 0. I'm just sort of taking you through a full flight really, I suppose now. It's what always ends up happening on this channel. Next, you're going to go to the fuel pumps. You turn on all of the left and right tank pumps. You would also turn on the center pumps if you have a message here that says fuel in center. But we don't have any fuel in center. So we do not need to turn it on. Beacon goes on. Recall. Check nothing untoward. And the transponder is down here. And I'm going to set the transponder to... should be on transponder at this stage. There we go. Great. Now we will run that before start checklist. So flight deck door closed and locked. MCP V2 149. Heading 269. Altimeter 6000. Or altitude, sorry, 6000. Takeoff speeds. We have V1 127. VR 132. V2 149. CD pre-flight is complete. Trim. We should set that now as well. So we said 6.25 on the units. So we look down here and I can see it's at 4 currently. So I'm going to trim that nose up until we get 6.25. Can take quite a while, quite a slow trim. There we go, 6.25 units. Taxi takeoff briefing completed. Before start, checklist complete. Get rid of that. So the airplane is now ready to go and it's time to push back. Now today we have the Rolls-Royce engines, so we can start both at once. I'm just going to get the pushback going. So Shift P will hopefully work. There we go. And you can get the airplane. I love the beacon. Old style lights on the 777. Remember, it was designed in the 80s, first flew in the early 90s. So yeah, you don't get the modern sort of LED style ones. Tiger's now connecting, and that should get the airplane pushed back. They would, of course, ask you to release the parking brake at the appropriate moment. So I'll do that now, ready to go. And once it starts moving, we will start both engines at the same time, and I'll let you enjoy some of the sounds of this this new sound set, which I think is really fantastic. And there it goes. Fantastic. What a machine. Like I say, PMDG have completely captured the silhouette of the 777, no doubt about it, as you would expect. So the pushback is complete, and yeah, we're going to have to make a tight right turn here, but I think we can do it. We have rear truck steering and pretty good nose steering as well. And it's time to start both of those big Rolls-Royce engines. So into the flight deck, and all we need to do here, pretty straightforward. I'm going to display the secondary engine instruments, and I'm going to put both switches to start. As it's nice weather today, we can start both, and then both fuel control switches to run. And now I'm going to let you enjoy the sounds. PMDG have improved the soundscapes all around, and they are going to continue to improve this in the couple of weeks after release. So there's more to come. We obviously have 3 variants of engines, and they have different sounds for those accordingly. As we move around the airplane, you can hear the different sounds. So I never actually had a big problem with PMDG's original sounds, although I can understand how people were not particularly overwhelmed by them on the 777-300. I thought they were serviceable, but they weren't anything I noticed in particular, and I suppose that is what says everything. And PMDG have worked hard on the sounds on this airplane, and it does show. We're going to get a bit more of that raw, and I'm going to show you all of the different engine option sounds a bit later on in the video. So for now, we'll sit there with a nice view of that engine, and let's set those flaps out. So actually no, let's go through the flow properly. So the engines are started, and it's time to move on to the overhead panel. The generators are online, so I'm going to turn off the APU. I'm going to leave the anti-ice in auto. We don't need it set for today. And now I'm going to set the flaps to 5. So let's just hear that flap motor run. There you go. You can hear that the hydraulic pump run as it drives out those flaps. Really nice. I hope you can hear that. Not as loud as the 350 because it isn't on the Boeings. The 777 and the 787 are not as loud on the hydraulic pumps for running out the flaps. But there we go. That's probably too much flap there. I am just going to need to set them correctly. So once the engines are running, the flow we do is APU can go off. The anti-ice is in auto. Flaps are set to 5. We don't need, we want to check there's no unusual messages here, so we press the recall button over here, and yeah, it's just the TCAS. We'll turn that on ourselves later. And then I'm going to come down and I can turn off the secondary engine instruments. They're all looking fine. We don't need those anymore. And I would run a flight control check. So let's do that now. Nice and slow. Full forwards. Come outside, we'll see it as well. Full up. Full left. And full right. You don't actually need to look at the flight control page when you do this. You are just running the flight controls, and the airplane will work out if everything is working as expected. Once that's done, I can bring up the checklist for the before taxi checklist. Anti-ice is in auto, recall is checked, flight control is checked, ground equipment clear, before taxi, checklist complete. You'll now get your taxi clearance from air traffic control. You would turn on your taxi light. I like to use the runway turn-offs as well, sort of maybe a bit of a Airbus habit, I'm not sure, but I think a bit of extra lights other than one little light on the nose is always a good idea. But the way they are positioned on the Boeing perhaps doesn't make much difference. And we can get ready to go. Right, lights are on, it's all clear on the right, all clear on the left. We're going for a hard right turn. Brakes released. There we go. You can do that just by tapping the toe brakes really, and this airplane is very light, but it will still take a little bit of oomph on the Rolls-Royce, I believe, to get it going. And there we go. It's moving. Bit of forward momentum. And then we'll get the turn going. And if we look outside, we need a bit of power, because once you get the nose wheel steering tight on these heavy twin jet Boeings, they run out of energy quite easily. They have very good turning circles, but as a result, you do need to keep some power in. And you'll see as well, those rear trucks, you can just about see there, it is turned, straight, turn. So there we go, bit of power, get the nose gear round. We'll just about make that. Yes, that's not a normal way they'd push you back. That's just down to the way my flight sim doesn't have anything built in. So taxiing out to the runway, not a lot to do on the Boeing. You've done your flight controls already, unlike the Airbus, so of course you will simply check that nothing changed about your takeoff performance or your routing. You'll make sure that your cabin is secure once they are. A little trick is just to put that to TARA, so you know that they are ready, just a little reminder. And you will make sure that all your numbers and performance hasn't changed. Depending on your airline, you may have a procedure where you'll do the landing data, the weights at this point. Confirm the weights, like in the Phoenix, it does it. Now this is a 200, so that was too much of an oversteer for a 200. That was more of a 300 oversteer, so you'll see that I'm a little bit right of centerline now from doing that. So you don't need to turn it as severely as you would the 777-300. I say severely. You don't need to oversteer it as much as you would the 300, because it's just that little bit stockier, a little bit shorter, and like I say, quite good turning on those main gears. Another thing about the 200ER over the 300ER is that we don't have any camera option. We can't bring up a camera on here. I know it doesn't work on the PMDG 300ER either, but yeah, it doesn't work here. It's not fitted to the 200s like we were saying earlier. That's why, by the way, you don't have the black stripes on top of the wing. Those stripes are actually there. Just ignore that forklift truck. There we go. Just pretend that didn't exist. Yeah, that's why you don't have those black stripes. Those stripes are there so that the pilots on that camera system can see where the main landing gear is, even with the flaps extended, because the flaps cover the camera view of the main landing gear. So that's why you have those stripes to see where they'll be. But you don't need it on the 200 because there's no camera. Not sure what's happened to my taxiway here. Not very good. Right, let's get ourselves onto the runway. Okay, so we're lining up on the runway now. We put our landing lights left and right to the on position, strobe lights on as well. And we can run the before takeoff checklist. In this PMDG, it's just one item. It's just the flaps to 5. But The real aircraft, of course, it's usually a bit longer. It's airline specified. So that's the before takeoff checklist complete. Now for takeoff, we are going to treat it very much like a 777-300ER. The procedure is the same. We don't have that landing gear that's going to sort of stand us up off the runway, but the reason we don't have it is because we're not so worried about a tail strike. The tail's got a good gap, so a normal rotation should work here, just like it should work on the 300 as well. They've sort of accounted for that for you. It's one way that they keep these aircraft types on the same license for pilots. So normal rotation rate, and what we're going to do is stabilize the engines. Now we are EPR, this being a Rolls-Royce variant. We'll see when we look at the GE and Pratt & Whitney, the N1 variants, but this is Rolls-Royce, so we have this EPR. So I'm going to put it to 1.05 EPR, and then once it's stabilized, this little screw is like a shortcut for pressing the toga buttons. You can also press them here or assign them onto your controllers as appropriate. As you can see, didn't need to go too far with the nose. Get that in between those screens, and I'm hoping that'll put us somewhere on the center line, slightly to the left there, but not too far off. Right, so let's go. So hopefully you can enjoy the sounds. I'll turn them up a bit extra. Bit of forward pressure on the yoke. Engines to 1.05, somewhere there. Which is actually quite low on the M1s, but there we go. Stabilized. Click. Thrust ref is now driving those to the green chevrons, which should be 1.318 EPR. And we got thrust set there. As we get to 80 knots, stick to neutral. That's my throttle. I'm moving my hardware throttles there, so ignore that. It has done the right thing. That's my hardware.
V1.
There's rotate. Gentle rotation now. Once all the wheels are off the ground, letting it weathercock into wind.
Positive rate of climb.
Positive rate of climb. Gear up. You'll see we used almost none of that runway because we've just got so much excess power in this 200 without the fixed D rate. It's just rockets up. Through 400 feet, we get thrust ref VNAV speed, and it's gone into LNAV mode. Now we're at acceleration. It's going to bring the thrust back to climb 2. I'm going to lower the nose. And now we are accelerating. Once we get above the green 5, let's put the autopilot in just so I can talk to you. That's the autopilot engaged. Above the green 5, I'll bring the flaps to 1. And above the green 1, I can bring the flaps to up. Very similar to the 320, and of course identical to the 78 and the 777-300ER. So the aeroplane's in thrust ref, which means it's going to use the climb reference, so climb thrust, which we can check over here. It's in LNAV, so it's following the magenta string, and it's in VNAV speed, which is the most standard VNAV mode you're going to be using. It's going to accelerate to 250 knots, the flaps are going to retract fully, and we are climbing away. As you can see, it's a bit of a rocket ship. I've now set standard. You can do that by pressing the barrow button here, but at these weights it's just climbing up. I put 390 in, so if I go to VNAV, cruise, I can see here, optimum is 410, maximum 430, but the recommended 390. Also make sure you load in the winds, which are in the FMC com page. Press wind, and then you can load them in. I should have done that before takeoff. Short flight like this, it won't make much of a difference, but on a long haul flight, it certainly would. So you would do that on the ground before you set off. We're climbing away then up to 390, all looking very nice. And yeah, it now is just, it's a 777. It's a 777-300ER, 200ER, minor differences. Some things from chatting to 777 pilots is the energy management. It's a little easier to manage the energy on the 200 in the descent because it's got less weight behind it, so that can help. It's also going to be very powerful at these weights, and there's different engine noises, of course, associated with the Rolls-Royce, GE, Pratt & Whitney. So I will, like I say, show you the other variants a little bit later on in the video. We can monitor things on the navigation display by zooming in and out, as you can see, following the LNAV. And if I press data, we'll see the times we're going to reach the waypoints. Through 10,000 feet, the aircraft's automatically accelerated to its en route climb. I'm going to turn off the landing lights, turn off the taxi lights and the runway lights, and we'll just have the strobe, beacon and nav lights. Very nice. I think the sounds are really nice. I hope you can hear them. Let's have a little listen outside. Hear those engines roaring. Airplane looks fantastic, as you would hope, really. Like I say, lots of changes coming to the sound on this aeroplane. It's a whole new setup, but also more changes to come post-release, so excited to hear it as it progresses. There's also been lots of work on the soundscapes in the flight deck and the avionics. Like I say, I have not flown a 777 in real life yet, so I do not have the authority to tell you whether this is realistic or not, but it sounds very reasonable. You start to get lots of air rushing noise from the air conditioning once the airplane's up in the cruise, and the engines start to fade and be a bit quieter as you get up into the thinner air. That's quite normal, so it is noticeable that that has happened as we've climbed. I'm going to turn the seatbelt signs to auto for now, and we have an FMC message, alternate list uplink, so it's downloading some alternates for us. Right, there we go, the green line showing us where we'll level off at flight level 390, or whatever level I put into the window. Let's say it's 37, you see it gets closer. We don't have the vertical situation display that the 787 has, which is a shame, but it's not there. And if we want to fly around heading, I just press cell and we're in heading select, and it will follow the heading bug. You can also press heading hold and it will just fly straight ahead. Very rare to use that mode. It's sort of just a mode for when other things have gone wrong. What I can do though, instead of us flying all the way to Geneva, I'm going to set up an arrival back into Heathrow, just so we can sort of get through a complete flight in today's video in a reasonable time. To do that, you could go to your departure arrival page and then press index, and then you could load in your arrival at destination, LSGG arrival, and load it in. But like I say, we're returning to Heathrow, so I'm actually going to click arrivals at Heathrow. We'll land in on 27 left, and we'll transition via Biggin. I won't put in a star, I'll execute that. You can see here the legs, however, have carried on with our whole route, so I'm going to bring Biggin by selecting it in the legs page, go back to legs page 1 where the magenta is, and put it in, and you can see now the airplane will draw a straight line to it. Check target altitude. The airplane's complaining because we are now seriously high and we should actually be in the descent, so it's gone to VNAV out and leveled off. I'm going to put 10,000 feet in and we can begin our descent in towards Biggin. Just showing you how these modes work. Flight level change mode I'm going to use, which will open the speed window. At 250 knots, flight level change, it should idle the engines and then try and reduce to 250 knots and descend its way in towards 10,000 feet. I need to re-engage LNAV. It won't do that automatically, unlike the Airbus, so don't forget that, easily forgotten. And the airplane will now turn around. Now we're not ready to actually begin our arrival. Let's go to our charts and I'll bring up a hold for what we're going to do at Biggin. So we'll go back to the electronic flight bag, and then I'm going to go to approach. Actually, it's probably star. Search Heathrow star. Let's do Biggin 10, that's fine. Just need to see what the hold actually should be at Biggin, and then we can type it in. It does work, of course, in the PMDG 777s, as do all the avionics you'd expect to work. You can see on here we are 6,300 feet high, so we'll need to enter the hold to give us a fighting chance of making this arrival. So it's not actually a Biggin arrival, it's a Lesso via Biggin. So Biggin hold 302 with right hand turns. I can type that in. To do that, I'm going to press hold, take the Biggin waypoint and put it in there, and then I'm going to put in 302 inbound with right hand turns, 302 right hand turns. We'll do 1 minute as we're so low. Execute. That should now appear there. There it is, and that's going to give us breathing room to set up and be ready for the approach. Right, so imagine we've been in the cruise and we aren't actually descending yet. One checklist we would have done is the after takeoff checklist, so that's done. After takeoff, checklist complete. The next one is going to be the descent checklist, which we're not quite ready for yet, even though we are descending just while I sort of speed things along. So the approach we have into London is going to be the ILS 27 left. ILS 27 left, we're going to pin that. And we need to put in the minima. All the same, 277 feet. Up here, minimums on Barrow. Let's try and set that. One of the worst switches ever designed. I don't understand how it got accepted. It's so difficult to use in simulators, and it's equally difficult to use on the real aircraft. But there we go, 277 Barrow. That's the minimum setup. Next, we want to work out a landing performance. So you can go to Performance Tool, And luckily they have a landing en route. I can simply type in where we're going to land, although suffice to say it's not going to be an issue to land on 27 left. Load in the current aircraft weight, import weather. Again, it's just not going to be an issue, but as you can see we could easily fit on the runway, and you can also choose auto brakes. So if we did auto brakes 2, we'll easily fit as well. There you go. That's how much, that's runway left to right that we're going to use. So we're pretty much free reign. Now, from speaking to 777-200 pilots, flap 25 is quite a common landing flap, just like it is on the 78. So we'll put that in there. Flap 25 for landing gives it an approach speed of 135 knots. We're back at more normal weights now. This is not an uncommon landing weight for an aircraft like a 777-200. So I'm going to do, should be pretty representative. We'll be flat 25, 135 knots, and we'll go auto brake 3, which I've been told is quite a common setup for landing this aircraft. There we go. In the NavRad page, you can see the ILS is automatically be tuned 109.5, course of 269. If we go to the EFB, we can see 269, 109.5. That will appear on the top left of the PFD, so there's the DME and the ILL. So we've set up the minimums, the performance, and we know the weather. I can also set QNH of 1013 and sort of sitting in the background by just sort of twisting this to the correct QNH. So that is ready to go at the moment it becomes relevant. I do like that feature. That's the best design part of this EFIS control. You can display terrain, by the way, if you press tear, or of course you can have the weather radar displayed on the navigation display, your choice. It doesn't tend to show much on the Boeings compared to the Airbus. It gives you a much more sort of comprehensive green and blue map. This one doesn't show you the blue parts, but there we go. Now it's going to enter the hold at Biggin as we descend. Like I say, we can see we're 6,200 or 300 feet high now. If you want to get height off, the speed brakes are very effective on this, just like they are on the other Boeings. So speed brake lever, nice and slowly, and that will rapidly decelerate the aircraft. Again, as I said earlier, not needed quite as much on the 200, I believe, as the 300, because you have that less weight, still on a nice big wing, so the airplane is quite responsive and a little easier on the energy management, a little more forgiving, and that seems to be the general theme, a little more forgiving. Once we have all those things set up, we can run our descent checklist. So recall, you press the recall button, make sure nothing untoward is going on. Failures are available in PMDG, by the way. If you go to menu, PMDG setup, aircraft, failures, you could fail some systems. These are being tweaked at the moment as well, I believe, but they are there. So anyway, recall is checked. There's nothing wrong with the airplane. Notes, they would show up down here, a little option for notes. That would be notes relating to failures you've had, but there are none today, so that's checked. Auto brake 3, and it's showing up there, so that's selected. Landing data, that's VREF of 135, minimums 277, and the approach briefing is complete. That's the descent checklist complete. Great. So that's what you do, and then you'd get to your top of descent and then descend down to here. You can see all the avionics working just lovely. This is absolutely, it's a great experience, just as the previous 777 was as well. Descent modes, we can do vertical speed, put in 300, 500, 1,000 feet per minute would be pretty normal in a hold like this. And it will go VS 1,000 and descend down to our new altitude of 6,000 feet. What I can also do is press flight level change, and it will aim to be there in 2 minutes. And if it can't, it will just go to idle. But that could be a bit aggressive in a hold if there's traffic beneath you. So we'll stick to 1,000 feet per minute. I'm also going to wind the speed back now. Come back to below 220 knots. You wouldn't actually hold at 250 knots like we've been doing there. Passing 10,000 feet in the descent. Should make sure we already have the seatbelt signs on. On a long haul aircraft, you'd have done that earlier. Probably shortly after beginning your descent. Just to make sure the cabin has time. Short haul, you can do it 10 minutes to landing, but not realistic here. With the left and right landing lights on as well. That's all we need for now. Now something I do want to show you is the lighting. So let's make it a bit gloomy for now. It's currently 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but if we just move it into early dusk, you can get the great effect of the 777's cockpit lighting. I absolutely love this sort of green slime lighting going on in here. It's the only Boeing, the 787 doesn't have this. It's grey and white sort of backlighting, but I really like seeing it here. And then the master will control lots of things, including the screen brightness and the backlighting. It's a neat system, and you can turn it on and off by clicking that little switch in. But very nice indeed. If I look outside, we've got the landing lights on. They're actually volumetric, which is very nice. I really like the lighting on this airplane. I think they've done a spectacular job with it. It just looks really accurate. The strobes are a really nice strength, and they give off a little bit, again, a little bit of volumetric, and you can see the lights in the cabin. Speaking of which, we should probably have a quick wander in the cabin as well. But yeah, the lighting is really spot on. Just exactly like you expect it to be. Doing the classic Boeing, which does one flash of the strobes, the Airbus does two. So that's quite a difference that you only notice if you're really into these things. Let us head into the cabin. Oh, it's going to be a bit of a challenge in the dark. There we go. So the cabin is in its gloomy lighting, so I'm actually going to put it back to the afternoon like we were. And we can go and see that we have a full interior, and it's customized to this livery, of course, with the screens as you'd hope, and the logos up here and so on. So yeah, very nice too. I'm not big on cabins. I know people like them. They're not my most high priority, but I can understand that people do like them. So there they are. Right, we'll close the door. Make sure we go onto Q&H as we descend down to 6,000 feet. We're in the hold. Great. I think it's time to begin our approach. Before we do that though, let's have a bit of flying time. We can't just do the whole flight on autopilot. So I'm going to disconnect the autopilot now. Go to the flight director. I'm going to turn off the flight directors. And I'm going to turn off the auto throttle. And we'll just fly the airplane around a bit. We get those warnings as we would expect. So, wings level. Level off the airplane with a bit of power. It's lovely. The PMDG aircraft, the 737 and the DC-6 and the 777-300 have all been lovely machines to fly in the simulator, and no surprise, this is no exception. I don't quite know how PMDG does it, but they're lovely to fly, and they are usually very lovely to land, although I haven't landed in this video yet, so I appreciate that early statement to say, a very brave statement. We'll see how it actually goes. Maybe I'll change my mind. But no, it's responsive. It has, you can actually see the rudder, so if I go back right, maybe we'll do it the other way, back left, you can see that rudder just twitching as it compensates with a yaw. This is a fly-by-wire aircraft, so the flight controls are doing work. There you go, you see that rudder moving now. The flight controls are doing work to stabilize and trim it and yaw it and so on. So it is done correctly. It also has the trim reference speed. So you can trim the airplane for a speed. So at the moment I have it trimmed, I think somewhere around 220 knots, maybe a little bit faster. So now it will simply pitch up and down to try and stay at that speed. So if I add a load of power, the nose will rise as the airplane accelerates to try and maintain that speed. So I'll add the power and let it stabilize, and it should stabilize back at the speed it's trimmed at. Why is that so clever? Well, that's instead of having it trimmed sort of traditionally like a 737, what would happen on that aircraft is as soon as I added that power, the nose would have shot up into the sky because the engines are under the wing and they push the nose up. But this is more like an Airbus. It is electronically manipulating the controls to remove some of these negative impacts of having engines down there, which makes it a smooth machine to fly, certainly, and less of a handful in certain situations. So you can see it's put nose too much up, so it's lowering a little bit to get back to the 220 speed. There is actually an option in here to show you what speed it's trimmed to, but the real aircraft doesn't have that, so we're not going to use it today. I don't think it's necessary. You don't really need to think about it, you just operate it like a normal aircraft. What we can also do is if I idle the throttles and raise the nose gently, we can get into the low speed range. The airplane does have some protections where it will try, but you can stall this. It is a Boeing. The pilot does have, of course, complete control of the aircraft, but there are, like I say, some protections. I think we'll eventually get the pitch limit indicators, those eyebrows, there they are. So if we get the wings to match those, that will mean we've reached the angle of attack where the aircraft will be entering the stall. Okay, I've finally got the trim to run enough to do it, so we'll pull up now, and you can hear the stick shaker. But yeah, pretty hard to actually get it to go into the stall. Anyway, we would lower the nose, remove any indications of the stick shaker, slowly feed on the power, and with the speed this low, we can gently recover the airplane without putting too much power on to force it back into a stall. Lovely. Even if I go to flaps 5 here. It's just a nice machine. Yeah, I think you'll enjoy hand flying this, although I imagine not many people will. You're mostly going to be flying this a long way out over the ocean, aren't you? So nothing unusual now. We'll run the approach checklist, which just says altimeters. They are indeed on the QNH of 1013. That's the approach checklist complete. And I should turn on the flight directors as well. That does help. And now I'm going to imagine that air traffic control gives us a heading of pretty much north as they start to vector us towards the ILS. You can, of course, just leave it in lateral navigation mode and it will follow the string all the way there. But heading select, there we go. And if I go to departure arrival, I can draw an intercept line, but I'm going to draw it for the center fix, course 269. So what I've done there is I've taken the waypoint I want to sort of extend out like an extended center line, so that just draws the line out, and then I've put in the course that I want it on. So 269 is the inbound course, so that's an inbound line on 269. Execute, and now that is in front of us. Speed out. That's a good way to sequence a flight plan if you're being radar vectored by air traffic control. So in 20 miles we'll be arriving and we'll be turning left and intercepting the ILS. We've got 10 tons of fuel, so fair bit of fuel on board. We're in a pretty good place. Some things worth mentioning, like I say, this is a preview build of the 777-200, but it is, I found absolutely running lovely and smooth on my computer. No issue with performance whatsoever, just like the PMDG 737 DC6 777-300. I don't know how the PMDG does it, but the smooth frame rates are a joy, very consistent and stable. I will say I'm running this on my new computer, which is quite powerful. So it may not be representative of everyone's experience. This computer is running on an AMD Ryzen, let me get the name right, it's a 9950 X3D R9, I think it is. Let's just continue our descent here. We'll do it in VS. Notice that it's gone to 240 because I actually changed the modes around. So in VNav, that's the speed it wants to be. So you have to actually reselect it back. So I'm in VS now. This is an easy mistake to make in the Boeing. Just keep an eye. That speed window had opened there on me. Put it back to the min clean speed, just at 210 speed VS. So yeah, I'm running on an R9 9950 X3D. Let me just make sure I got that name right. And it has 64 gigabytes of RAM and an NVIDIA RTX 5080 graphics card. So I appreciate not everyone's going to be running on a computer like that, although I'm sure lots of people will. But yeah, it is a very smooth experience for me in Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020. Okay, you can see here that we're arriving onto the ILS. It's in front of us. So what I'm going to do is start to slow down the airplane. We're below the glide slope. You can see that on this magenta diamond above us. So we don't need to be descending quite so fast. We're still 20 miles out. We're only at 5,000 feet. So I'm going to reduce to 400 feet per minute and start slowing the airplane down. The speeds are similar to the Airbus and the 777-300, of course. So 250 knots at 15 miles is about as fast as you want to be. By 10 miles, looking to be about 200 knots. By 8 miles, 180. And by 6 miles, 160 knots. So they pretty much match. 8 miles, 180. 7 miles, 170. 6 miles, 160. There are variations on that, but you just need to be aware. That's a good baseline to start with. You don't want to be any faster than that, especially in these long-haul aircraft, because it can get pretty awkward pretty quickly. So let's bring out flap 1. Flaps 1. Out they travel. Can I get a nice view of them? There they are. And we'll go flaps 5. Travel out the back of the wing. And we can start reducing the speed back to the green 5. So the slowest speed you can go is whatever flap you have, that green number. So that means the 5 down here. Don't set the speed until you have put the flap out. There we go. Back to the 5. Now I'm going to imagine we're clear for the approach. I'm going to do localizer first, because there is a risk if you do approach first that it will capture that glide slope first and start down, even if it isn't on the localizer, which is not safe, it's not done procedure. We'll just do a bit more of an intercept heading, so heading 300. Looking good though. Nice view of London today. And hopefully that lock will engage in green shortly. As you can see, the weight's sort of about right. Flat 5 come back to 170 knots. This is because, like I say, we're at normal landing weights for the 777. We just were very light for takeoff. But 10 tons of fuel with lots of passengers, yeah, pretty reasonable. We could certainly carry more cargo as well. It's a very capable, powerful machine. It can carry a lot of things. Big cargo holds, big fuselage. I mean, look how chunky it is. It's one of the widest on the market. There's a localizer, that's now active, so I'm going to arm the glide slope. And that will now intercept that. And we're doing 166 knots at 14 miles, so we are plenty slow enough. We don't need to slow down anymore right now. You can see all the flight controls doing the hard work. Roll spoilers used heavily on aircraft these days. Inboard flapper on and the outboard aileron. This outboard aileron gets locked out at high speeds. You'll see it do all sorts of fancy things now on approach as it sort of modifies the aircraft for landing. By the way, one tip is to make sure that you, by the time you're on the glide slope, that you have the speed, some flap out, some drag flap. Flap 1 will just give you slats, it's no good. Flap 5 is a minimum. That gives you the drag at the back of the wing, which stops the airplane from accelerating down. So that's these big drag flaps here. You'll notice the 777, both the 200 and the 300 have single slotted Fowler flaps on the outboard flap, but the inboard on the 777 has double slotted, which is quite different to the 787 where it's all single slotted. 78 has much smaller flaps and as a result comes in considerably faster than the 777. This is actually a slow approach speed for me. Right, we're about to intercept the glide slope, there it is. In case we go around, I put the go around altitude in the window there. And you can see here, even with flat 5 out, as the nose comes down onto the glide slope, the speed is trying to accelerate slightly. This is accurate, this is common for these big Boeings. So we can always put a bit more drag out if we need it, which I'm going to do. Let's go flat 15. And now we can come back to the green. Let's do 160 knots for now. And there you go, that extra drag is enough. It's bringing us back. You can see the inboard flaperon droops, becomes part of the flap system, and the ailerons are drooped as well. Radio altimeter's come alive. That's 2,500 feet above the ground beneath us. London's pretty much sea level, so they pretty much matches with our altimeter. We can lower the landing gear now. Let's take a look at that gear extension just to see the animations on it, as I'm sure a lot of work's gone into it. So gear down, big doors open. You can hear immediately the drag, so the airplane is adding a load of power to compensate for that and to maintain 160 knots. That pops into place. There's a lock, the hydraulic locks, and you can see it's been twisted so that the gear is tilted in the correct direction. Nose gear, look how long it is when it's fully extended. So there we go. Airplane is almost ready for us. I'm now going to slow down to our final approach speed, so let's put out the landing flap, which today is 25. You would typically go via flap 20 to be honest, and then to 25 or 30 depending what you're landing. And we'll bring the approach speed back just to sit 5 knots fast, so sit on VREF 140 knots. Like I say, this is a pretty slow speed compared to the 787, but it has more flaps available. 787 is built for efficiency. This is a bit more of a performance aeroplane, so it has bigger flaps, bigger landing gear, and can take more weight. 787, doing its ultra long sort of flying, has slightly lighter flaps and lighter landing gear. Right, let's set the speed brake to arm. We need to do that, so that should be arm, not extended. Make sure you get it right. There we go, speed brake armed, and we'll do the landing checklists. Landing check, speed brake armed, gear down, flaps 25, checklist complete. It will change the flaps according to which you told it it's going to land with. So that's it now, it's time to land. So how are we going to land the 777-200ER? Well, same as we do the 300ER. The Boeings land very nicely. It's automatically going to close the thrust levers, which actually brings me onto a point where you need to have your hardware set so that your hardware doesn't interfere with the auto throttle when it's engaged. That is a really useful setting to have. Mine is currently interfering, so I need to adjust that accordingly after this flight. You also want to simply flare at around 30 feet, start your flare, The thrusters will close for you as long as you have the autopilot engaged. You can see here it's in speed mode, and it's also armed the landing mode, so it could auto land off this quite easily. And then you're going to flare, correct any drift with the rudder so that your nose is pointing down the runway, and land the airplane. So let's give it a go. Autopilot disconnects. If you do it, you normally press it twice, but mine would toggle it on and off if I do that. Oh, there we go. No, it does work. Good. And now we're just going to gently follow the flight directors. It's a very stable machine, so we don't need to do too much here. And like I say, it won't detrim itself because it has that fly-by-wire system accounting for it. So we're trimmed to our approach speed of 140. Not much else to do. 2 whites, 2 reds. Start looking out towards the end of the runway as we get towards the threshold. Running a little bit high here.
50. 30.
30. Flare.
10.
It's idle on its own. There's touchdown. And then get the reverse out to idle. Gently lower the nose. The nose can crunch in otherwise, so you've got to be careful with it. The auto brakes will engage and you'll feel it decelerating, but if it's not, of course, take over manually. And now we're rolling out with idle reverse. Speed brakes up. Oh, they should be up. That's my hardware getting in the way. There we go. And bring it to a stop. No trouble at all at these weights, even without the speed brakes, as you saw. As you get down to taxi speed, you can take over by using the toe brakes. You'll hear the click of the switch disarming, and now you're on manual brakes. I'm just going to bring it to a stop here on the runway. So before we finish, I just want to show you those sounds once more and give you a bit of a good sense. So let's spool up these engines up and down a couple of times so you can really hear it. So I'm going to turn up the audio for you. I think it sounds really nice. That Rolls Royce roar, that Trent roar, buzzsaw sound almost. Reminds me of the IE on the A320. Notice as well when we go to full power, see the tailplane shaking. Love that detail. Really nice. And the engines also wobbling on their pylons. By the way, running engines at high power on an aircraft with a parking brake set is very uncomfortable. The airplanes do not like it. They do not like it one bit. They're just desperate to get moving. So we'll compare that to all the other ones. Here we have the Pratt & Whitney 4000 variant of the 777-200ER in this rather fetching battleship grey United Airlines livery. I do quite like this livery. So I'll let you hear the sounds in just a moment, but something we can see is if we jump inside the cockpit, we on this engine do indeed have EPR, so I was wrong. It is EPR as well as the Rolls-Royce. So there we go. But if we jump outside, I'm going to turn up the audio and let you listen to this engine spooling up and down. Just to give you a sense of its differences. Like I say, this is still a work in progress. And finally we have the GE90 variant, here represented by Alitalia. This is an engine that you'll be familiar with because of course it is used on the 777-300ER. It's the only option available on that aircraft, but like I say, one of 3 on the 777-200ER. So I'm going to let you enjoy the sounds, and this one is indeed just N1 down here. So let's have a listen, do some spooling up and down. As I said, this is still being worked on, and PMDG will continue to work on this after release, but it is a big step up over what we had on the 300ER in my opinion. But that's for you to decide. Hopefully this video has given you the information you need. So that's all for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it. Like I said, if you want to have full tutorials on the PMDG 777, then please do watch my 777-300ER videos on my channel, PMDG 777 Cold and Dark to Takeoff, and climb and cruise and descent and landing. That will take you through all the bits you need to know to fly this aircraft. But hopefully today's video has been useful for you as well, and given you a glimpse of the 777-200 from PMDG. Like I say, big improvements on the sounds and a lovely aircraft overall, even in this preview stage. Not final release, so I can't review it yet, but yeah, I've really enjoyed my time with it so far. I think you're going to enjoy it if you are in the market for a 777. The 200 is a really nice machine. It's really grown on me in my time with it, as so often these aircraft do. But yeah, it's lovely. It looks great. It's a sort of stocky, powerful machine that's yeah, is a good bit of fun to have in the sim. And like I say, with those new sounds, really quite something. That's all then. Please do subscribe if you'd like to see more videos, guides, live streams on the channel. We'll see you again in the near future. Thank you so much for watching. Bye bye.